1992 LA riots, the uprising, the civil unrest after the acquittal of 4 LAPD officers in connection with the beating of Rodney King. To be an officer on the job in that era, we talked to Brian Bentley, a former LAPD officer who wrote a book. It's called One Time, the story of a South Central Los Angeles police officer. In it, he talks about the excessive force that he saw. Brian, welcome. Thank you. You wrote the book because?
Well, I wrote the book because no one else had wrote a book similar to the experience that I had, and that was dealing with police brutality. And since I wrote the book, no one else has, followed up with a book quite like the one that I wrote.
All right, it's important for you to speak out now because, we're seeing protests, we've seen riots, we've seen the death of George Floyd. What do you want to say now about the times we're in?
Well, it's interesting because I first wrote my book and I started speaking out in 1996. Those were turbulent times, and it's interesting because here we are again. I went through a reform right after the riots with the Christopher Commission, and everything has come back full circle. So I'm just hesitant about things when I hear about reform and change and defunding, and we're right back where we started in 1992.
All right, let's take our viewers back a second. Your era was the 90s. You're 10 years with the LAPD. Thinking of the O.J. Simpson on the run after his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend Ron Goldman were murdered. You were at the door when Simpson returned home to Brentwood. Talk about your time, though, with the LAPD. How was that for you?
My time with the LAPD was very interesting. I started off I was on probation at the West LA division, and then I went to South Central LA for a number of years, and then I returned back to the West LA division. That's where I ended my career. One of the things about the job that was very interesting, and that applies to today's law enforcement, is that you have a group of officers. You have great police officers, but then you have a small group of officers who are addicted to the violence that comes with the job. And I say they're addicted because they're addicted in the same way that people are addicted to alcohol and cigarettes. These officers live for that. Their mantra is that we're hunters of men, and these officers are primarily in the Black community. And, that's their goal. They go out every night. They're looking for the action. They're looking for the thrill of the chase. And when they're doing that, they believe that they're helping the community, but somewhere along the way, they hurt a lot of people and make a lot of people feel uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. You
have some very strong thoughts on the Rodney King beating and incidents you say that are never caught on video.
Oh, exactly. I was with a group of officers at Southwest Division, and, police beatings. Right now what we're seeing is police beatings of people who are just your average citizens. Gang members get beat all day and all night, and no one ever sees it. They don't complain about it. You may have viewers who say, well, if they're criminals and they're gang members, maybe they should be handled roughly, or who cares if they get roughed up a little bit. But let me tell you what happens when you support police officers unconditionally and you don't address those issues. What happens is if you have an officer who's prone to violence and they grab someone, someone talks to them, they get in their face, they may grab their face and push them. Well, it's hard to turn that off. So when they go home, they're talking to their spouse, they react the same way as they do on the street. You may get an officer who's aggressive to his spouse. Also, too, when, let's say they're at home, some young kid walks across their grass, they get angry, they're going to respond the same way as they do on the job. They're in Costco.
Listen, Brian, I want to interrupt you because we only have a short amount of time. I want to ask you and bring you to 2020 now. What do you think of the LAPD today? Because there are cell phones everywhere. People are catching things everywhere. So are you hopeful?
No, I'm not hopeful.
No.
As I was mentioning, is that, these officers are addicted. They have cell phones. Citizens have cell phones. You have surveillance cameras on buildings. Officers have cameras. And these officers still go out there and they commit police brutality when everyone is watching. They also know the consequences. If they're arrested and prosecuted, they go to prison. They can get assaulted in prison, raped in prison, but those consequences don't matter. They cannot control themselves.
All right, one man's opinion. Brian Bentley, we thank you so much. You've written 3 books. We should let everybody know that you have those books out there. Thank you so much. We'll be right
Thanks
back.
for having me.
Thank you.